The top stories at this hour. South Korea removes Japan off its list of trusted trading partners in response to Japan's own trade curbs. Amid re-escalating tensions, the South Korean government vows to protect local companies from possible damages.
Sales of Japanese cars in the nation sink to a whopping 57% on year in August as a nationwide boycott of Japanese products continues.
South Korea confirms a second case of African swine fever. Authorities are working against the clock to contain the outbreak.
And with many demographic challenges facing Korea, the government unveils measures to revitalize the nation's labor market and deal with the fast declining population. News Center begins now.
Hello and welcome to Arirang News Center, live from Seoul. I'm Han-daeun.
And I'm Adam. Thank you for joining us this evening. We begin with the ongoing trade tensions between South Korea and Japan. Seoul has officially removed Tokyo from its whitelist of trusted trading partners in a tit-for-tat measure against Japan's export curbs.
To alleviate concerns of the move hurting local firms, the government says it'll make sure to minimize any negative impacts. Hong Yu starts us off.
South Korea's Trade Ministry has revised its export and import measures for strategic materials to better control exports to countries that violate global export control systems. The most prominent change in the recent revision is the classification change of export partners into Group A1, Group A2, and Group B. Japan, for instance, has been placed in Group A2, meaning that it will face tighter export controls like those in Group B. This means that local companies shipping strategic materials to Japan or other countries listed in Group A2 will have to submit 5 different documents instead of 3 for individual items. The approval process that used to take 5 days will now take 15 days, in addition to a separate approval regarding every export. The revised measures can, however, affect around 100 local companies. To minimize the impact, the South Korean government promised to ensure transparent monitoring of exports and provide customized counseling for affected companies. Another concern is that adopting such export curbs could backfire on Seoul, especially when it filed a complaint against Tokyo's trade restrictions to the World Trade Organization. But the ministry's Director General for International Trade Policy, Lee Ho-hyun, says there is nothing to worry about.
Our revision was based on evaluations of export control systems that go against international export control agreements. But Tokyo's export curbs were politically motivated. We have enough evidence to prove that.
So far, Japan hasn't made any requests for talks, but the South Korean government emphasized that even after the revision of export and import measures for strategic materials, they're ready for talks with Japan to resolve the trade dispute between the two countries. Hong Yu, Arirang News.
The Blue House has launched a new website laying out South Korea's position on Japan's trade measures in the Japanese language. The site can be found on the official website of Cheongwadae, and it contains President Moon's National Liberation Day speech and Deputy National Advisor Kim Hyun-jong's briefing on the decision to quit the bilateral intelligence sharing pact with Japan. The website was created as a guideline to the Japanese press so they can deliver the Korean government's position more accurately based on credible information. Japan was quick to react to Korea's downgrading of Japan's trade status. Japanese officials expressed discontent while the Japanese media predicted Seoul-Tokyo relations to get even worse. Our Lee Ji-won has more.
Tokyo has expressed regret over South Korea's decision to take Japan off of its whitelist of countries that get preferential trade treatment. Japanese media outlet NHK reported Wednesday the response from an official at the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, adding that the remark comes as Tokyo was not able to hear back from Seoul on the reasons for such a move. NHK then said the ministry will continue to ask for Seoul's reasons behind the move while analyzing how the removal from the whitelist will impact Japanese firms. Various Japanese media outlets also reported on this, calling the move a retaliation against Japan's decision to first take South Korea off its whitelist. Yomiuri Shimbun and Mainichi Shimbun further reported that the move isn't likely to have a significant toll on Japan's industries, as Korea does not produce a large portion of Japan's strategic imports. Something many papers also said was that the move does not resolve the issue and that it will further aggravate the situation. It's been nearly a year since South Korea and Japan's ties began to fall apart due to the forced labor ruling, where South Korea's Supreme Court ordered Japanese firms to compensate Koreans forced to work for the firms during Japan's colonial rule. But with South Korea not intervening in the court's ruling, as Tokyo had hoped, Japan imposed retaliatory measures on Seoul, such as taking it off its whitelist of trusted trading partners. Tokyo later claimed this was due to unspecified security issues. Seoul has been continuously asking Tokyo for talks on resolving the issue through dialogue, as has the U.S. President Moon Jae-in numerous times reiterated that the door to dialogue is wide open. But with Japan firm that no talks shall take place on the trade restrictions, Seoul and Tokyo are at a standstill. However, efforts to continue diplomatic talks continue, as the two sides are reportedly seeking to hold a foreign ministers' meeting on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly next week. That will be the first time Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa will meet her new counterpart Toshimitsu Motegi. While it's not likely that there will be any breakthrough at the meeting, an official at Seoul's foreign ministry says it is a natural step toward working things out. 이지원, Arirang News.
Sales of Japanese cars in South Korea dropped sharply in August. According to the Trade Ministry today, sales of Japanese cars fell by around 57% on year as Japan's trade curbs prompted South Koreans to boycott Japanese products. Japanese car brand Nissan saw the sharpest decrease in sales. Its sales were down by a whopping 87%, followed by Honda with an around 80% decrease on year. With weaker local currency and concerns over Japan's trade restrictions, prices of South Korean chips actually went up in August. Prices of other goods like industrial and agricultural products also increased. Our Yoon Jung-min has the numbers.
Prices of semiconductors rose in August for the first time in 13 months due to a weaker Korean won and concerns over a possible drop in supply due to Tokyo's export curbs on Seoul. The Bank of Korea said on Wednesday that both import and export price indices went up last month due to the weaker local currency against the greenback. In August, the average $1 exchange rate was up nearly 3% on month to around 1,209 won against the greenback. And as the market is concerned about a possible production cut in semiconductors, there was higher demand for chips, including DRAMs, flash memory, and system semiconductors. It's been over 2 months since Japan imposed export restrictions on key materials used in making chips, with only 3 shipments bound for Seoul allowed so far. An official at the central bank said the export curbs caused chip prices to go up. Some experts said the price hike is not just a temporary market reaction, but in fact, the price has begun to stabilize at a higher level. The overall export price index was up 1.5%. Other than semiconductors, the price index for industrial products was up 1.4%, led by transportation equipment and chemical products. Agriculture and fishery product prices were also up by 2.5%. Oil and coal prices, however, were down due to a fall in international oil prices. The import price index edged up 0.9% despite the fall in global oil prices. Raw material prices fell slightly, but costs went up for intermediary goods, including computers and electronics. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
In other news, a second case of African swine fever has been confirmed at a pig farm in Yeoncheon, Gyeonggi-do province. The disease does not pose a risk to humans, but it is fatal to pigs, so authorities are hard at work trying to stop it from spreading. Our Kim Jae has the latest.
Pigs at a second farm in South Korea were confirmed early on Wednesday to have African swine fever. The farm in Yeoncheon County is 48 kilometers away from Paju, where the first case of the African swine fever was confirmed on Tuesday. The Agriculture Ministry has designated 6 cities and counties, including Paju, Yeoncheon, and Pocheon, as key management areas to prevent the spread of African swine fever. The ministry will mobilize all disinfection vehicles and prevention teams to the 6 regions. They have also extended the 1-week ban on pork shipments from farms in those regions to 3 weeks.
In any case of an outbreak of disease, the priority is to block the virus from spreading from the farm that it was detected in. Our main goal is to be as fast as possible to prevent the disease from spreading.
Prime Minister Lee Na-yeon also visited breeding farms and disinfection facilities in Pocheon on Wednesday and vowed all-out efforts to contain the outbreak and ensure stable pork supplies.
What's for sure at this point is that the spread of the African swine fever took place through humans, animals, and transport vehicles. Based on that premise, we'll take swift and resolute measures.
The case comes only 4 months after North Korea revealed its own outbreak of African swine fever in late May. While it is speculated that the disease spread to the south from North Korea, authorities are currently working to discover the exact cause of the outbreak. African swine fever is a disease highly fatal to pigs, with a near 100% mortality rate. It's highly contagious in pigs and no vaccine currently exists, but it's important to stress that the disease is harmless to humans. The disease has already affected the pork prices, though. The average auction price of pork traded at 14 major wholesale markets across the nation had increased by nearly 33% on Tuesday compared to the day before. However, the Agriculture Ministry says the recent spike in prices is only due to the temporary distribution ban. South Korea's Finance Minister Hong Nam-ki said Wednesday the government will continue to monitor the pork price trends and prepare for emergency measures to stabilize prices if necessary. Kim Jae-hee, Arirang News, Yeoncheon.
So, with the mortality rate for African swine fever in pigs being as high as 100%, why don't we have a vaccine yet to stop this highly contagious animal disease? Our Lee Seung-jae tells us why.
African swine fever, now confirmed to be in South Korea despite the best efforts of local authorities, causes hemorrhagic fever and kills almost every pig that contracts it. There have been cases of pigs dying as quickly as 1 week after becoming infected. But despite the devastating nature of the disease, there is no known treatment or vaccine on the market. But given the technology available to modern science, why is that the case? While experts say compared to other viruses, the African swine fever virus is large in structure. Viruses like the ASF contain several genotypes, which means there are numerous types of proteins that the virus can produce in the animal's body. These proteins act as a defensive shield for the virus, which makes it extremely complex to fight.
AS doesn't mutate often, however, because the DNA structure of the virus is so complex, it produces a variety of antigens. It is difficult for the animal's immunity systems to fight back.
Compared to the foot and mouth disease, which can produce more than 10 types of proteins, African swine fever can produce more than 200. Also, aside from the recent outbreaks in Europe and in China, the virus mainly affected the African continent in the past, which could explain why well-funded research institutes in the West and Asia have focused their efforts elsewhere. Currently, work on a vaccine is being expedited in the US, China, and Europe, but experts warn that even if a vaccine can be formulated, it will take some time for it to be approved and go into mass production. Researchers also caution that because African swine fever is capable of destroying immune cells, any vaccine that could be developed might not be 100% effective. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The total number of households in South Korea is expected to start shrinking from the year 2041 amid the decrease in the number of marriages and the rapidly aging population. Our Seon Kyung has the details.
According to Statistics Korea on Wednesday, Korea's population will start decreasing in 2029 and the total number of households will start decreasing in 2041. The decline in the number of households comes later than the decline in population because 3 or 4 person households will split into 1 or 2 person households, particularly made up of unmarried individuals or couples whose children have moved out. In fact, 37.3% of Korean households in 2047 are expected to be single-person households, up from 28.5% in 2017. That figure is higher than in other countries. As of 2037, the proportion of single households in Korea is expected to stand at 35.7%, while that of Australia is projected to be 26.5%. The same figure is expected to hit 30.2% in 2036 in Canada and 27.8% in 2038 in New Zealand. As Korea's trend of rising single-person households combined with the decreasing total population, the number of households in Korea is expected to gradually increase to a peak of around 22.7 million households in 2040 before starting to decrease. Meanwhile, the worsening aging population is expected to cause the number of single-person households aged 65 and older in 2047 to triple compared to the figure for 2017. 서은경, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, the government has unveiled a set of measures to revitalize the labor economy and deal with population decline. Korea is rapidly becoming an aged society, so the measures are meant to encourage the participation of senior citizens and foreign workers. Our Lee Min-sun has the latest.
At a meeting Wednesday chaired by Finance Minister Hong Nam-gi, the Population Policy Task Force, set up back in April, unveiled measures to expand the working age population. In Korea, private sector workers have to retire when they turn 60. But these measures will mandate that companies keep people on the payroll after that age by either extending their retirement age, getting rid of it, or rehiring people who've just officially retired. The government will also provide bigger financial incentives to businesses that voluntarily hire or rehire senior citizens. South Korea has the lowest fertility rate in the OECD at 0.98 and is aging rapidly. The low birth rate and aging population means a shrinking labor force. In other areas, the government will review whether Korea has an appropriate number of teachers and military personnel because the number of people who can attend school or serve in the military is shrinking. The military will look into taking on more women, reducing the size of its standing forces, and reorganizing to focus on science and technology. Also, to increase the working age population, the government will look to improve the visa system and give incentives to foreign workers. The new visa system will be designed to attract highly educated and talented foreigners and give them more benefits like allowing them to bring their families and stay in Korea longer. Foreign workers who wish to stay in the countryside where the population is shrinking will get even more incentives. Foreign students and skilled workers in depopulated regions can get advantages for acquiring permanent residency and enjoy shorter processing times when re-entering the country. The government estimates these measures for foreign workers can create $160 million worth of revenue. Lee Min-sun, Arirang News.
The annual UN General Assembly is underway in New York, bringing together world leaders and diplomats from 193 member states. Absent from the gathering, however, is the Foreign Minister of North Korea. Our Kim Mo-gyun reports.
World leaders gathered in New York on Tuesday for the United Nations General Assembly. The main event of the session, the General Debate, will run from September 24th to the 30th, with nearly 200 representatives from around the world taking to the floor to deliver their speeches. Following the UN tradition, Brazil will be the first to speak, followed by host country, the United States. South Korean President Moon Jae-in, who has attended the event for each of the past 3 years, is scheduled to speak on the first day of the debate. He is expected to bring up the peace process on the Korean peninsula and call for combined efforts to achieve lasting peace. President Moon is also scheduled to hold separate talks with U.S. President Donald Trump on the sidelines of the session. For North Korea, Foreign Minister Lee Yong-ho, who has also attended the event in previous sessions, will not show up this year. Instead, the country's ambassador to the UN, Kim Sung, will represent Pyeongyang on the last day. With the stalled denuclearization talks between the U.S. and North Korea, attention is focused on what the representatives of the two countries will say. Another hot potato during the session is whether the leaders of the U.S. and Iran will sit down for talks, as tensions have been escalating following major attacks on Saudi Arabia's oil infrastructure, which Washington blamed on Iran. Alongside the general debate, high-level meetings are also set to be held throughout the session to discuss climate change and accelerate progress on sustainable development aimed at securing healthy, peaceful, and prosperous lives for all. Kim Mo-gyan, Arirang News.
It has been 1 year since President Moon Jae-in's third meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, and during that meeting, the two agreed to take steps towards denuclearizing the Korean peninsula and boosting inter-Korean relations. However, it seems such efforts have been running out of steam over the past 12 months. Our Park Hee-jun has more.
Exactly a year ago on September 19th, the historic day when President Moon Jae-in traveled to the North's capital of Pyeongyang for his third summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un.
나는 오늘 이 자리에서 지난 70년 적대를 완전히 청산하고 다시 하나가 되기 위한 평화의 큰 걸음을 내딛자고 제안합니다.
They made significant agreements that they jointly declared to the rest of the world. And denuclearization was discussed as an official agenda at an inter-Korean summit for the very first time. It produced some concrete measures, with the North agreeing to permanently dismantle its nuclear facilities at the Yongbyon nuclear complex.
We have agreed to make the Korean peninsula a land of peace, free from nuclear threats.
But 1 year later, the Yongbyon complex remains as it is. No roadmaps or timetables for nuclear disarmament have been made. No sanctions have been eased either. Instead, there's North Korea's blunt criticism toward the South and its series of short-range missile tests. At the core of the stalemate is the no-deal summit between North Korea and the U.S. in Hanoi in February. U.S. President Donald Trump walked away after Kim refused to abandon all of Pyongyang's nuclear programs. They also disagreed on the scope of the lifting of sanctions. The long stalemate has been a challenge for President Moon.
What Moon administration can do at the moment is quite limited by the fact that North Korea has publicly came out saying that South Korea should stay out of the negotiation between Washington and Pyongyang. South Korea, by staying out of the negotiation between Washington and Pyongyang, it actually gives some political leverage, meaning that if ultimately the talks breaks down, then South Korea can actually have a chance to restart the talks from a different angle, because it's not politically involved at the moment.
Patience and consistency. Despite the challenges, President Moon chooses to stay committed to his efforts to achieve peace and denuclearization on the Korean peninsula.
우리 정부는 그 역할이 무엇이든 할 수 있는 모든 것을 다해 한반도 평화 정착과 평화 경제로 공동 번영의 미래를 당당하게 열어갈 것입니다.
North Korea remains willing to negotiate. This is shown by Kim turning up for a last-minute trilateral meeting at Panmunjom and the numerous letters exchanged with President Trump. The Blue House is cautiously observing these recent developments, anticipating a new phase in Pyongyang-Washington talks that hopefully leads to improved inter-Korean relations. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
President Moon Jae-in spoke on the phone this morning with the leader of Saudi Arabia, Prince Mohammed bin Salman, about last weekend's drone attack on the kingdom's oil facilities. According to the Blue House, President Moon relayed words of comfort to the prince and to the Saudi people. Moon also said that such an attack threatening global energy security must not be repeated, and that Seoul fully supports the international efforts to eradicate terrorism. He noted that 30% of South Korea's oil supply comes from Saudi Arabia, and said he hopes the facilities can be rebuilt quickly, offering South Korea's help if needed. South Korea and Saudi Arabia, meanwhile, have agreed to set up a joint research center on developing nuclear energy for the kingdom. They signed 2 MOUs on Tuesday on the sidelines of the IAEA's General Conference in Vienna. South Korea's science ministry said officials from both sides agreed to boost cooperation to support the creation and licensing of a small, smart nuclear reactor. They will also work on developing the next generation model of the System Integrated Modular Advanced Reactor, or SMART, which was originally developed by Korea for small and remote areas. Seoul is offering free guided tours of the city's ancient wall built back in the Joseon Dynasty. Under the moonlight, the tours will take participants to old streets and villages along the stone wall that used to protect the city. There will be 4 tours next Tuesday and Thursday and on October 15th and 17th. The tours are based on a first-come, first-served basis and are limited to 35 adults for each session. Applications will be accepted from this Thursday for the September tours and from October 7th for next month's tours on the city's online reservation website.
President Moon Jae-in says fair and balanced reporting is being prevented by so-called fake news. He was speaking at the Blue House earlier today with Christophe Deloire, Secretary General of Reporters Without Borders. Moon said he believes freedom of speech is the foundation of democracy, but he added that such values are being damaged by hostility between those with different opinions, competition to break stories, and the fast spread of fake news. Deloire acknowledged the positive changes seen in Korean press under the Moon administration and thanked him for his efforts. It was President Moon's first meeting with the delegation from the RSF. Recent evidence suggests North Korea has shut its Yongbyon plutonium-producing reactor for just long enough for it to be refueled. That's according to a report by the International Atomic Energy Agency, which said it had been monitoring movements at the 5-megawatt reactor since last August. It found that the reactor was intermittently being operated until the end of November. Then it was completely shut down the month after. The agency said it observed movements suggesting signs of reprocessing activities at the plant's radiochemical lab, as well as evidence showing that the North had loaded parts to the reactor building. Russia has seized 2 North Korean fishing boats and 80 crew members for alleged illegal fishing in Russian waters. The North Korean crew on one of the boats, when they were caught, reportedly attacked Russian agents and injured 3 of them. The boats and crew were taken to Russia's Nakhodka port. Moscow's foreign ministry summoned the North Korean ambassador and expressed grave concerns. The city of Seoul is running a car-free week through this Sunday. It's part of efforts to reduce air pollution and encourage more people to use public transport. Sunday will be Seoul Car-Free Day, so the city will block off Sejongdaero Street from Gwanghwamun to Seoul Plaza and hold an eco-friendly event there. That has been your 3-minute news flash. It is that time now where we take a look at some of Arirang's digital media content.
And today we have another episode of Koreator, where foreigners share their love for Korea.
Hi, we are a crew from Australia.
It's so crazy. 더 미치는 중이야. If you can see 나에게로 와. 내일은 너 오늘이면 될 거야. Wow 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 wow. Let me drop the
And remember, you can be the next creator too.
The last hot spell has ended and it's expected to become cooler tomorrow.
For more details, let's turn to our Michelle Park at the Weather Center. Michelle.
Now, the air has gotten a lot cooler compared to yesterday, and now it truly feels like fall. And into the night, colder air will enter the nation from the northwest, leading to chillier conditions. So make sure to wear warmer clothes if you are going out for an evening stroll. And the weather will be comfortable for Thursday afternoon, but with intervals of clouds hovering over the nation. Whereas for Beijing, it will be gloomy with some dark clouds lingering. Now, checking out the readings in detail, the cold air tonight will cause the mercury to plunge down to 14 degrees Celsius for Seoul and Gwangju, and it will be a little higher at 19 for Jeju and the southern regions such as Busan. Now, daily highs are expected to be around the seasonal norms. Seoul and Daegu and Busan will mark up to 25 degrees, while Gwangju and Jeju will climb a bit higher to 27 and 26 degrees respectively. And more clouds will develop as we approach the weekend, and some parts of the country will receive some rain. And by Sunday afternoon, it will be rainy all across the country. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That will wrap it up for this edition of Arirang News Center. Thank you as always for watching.
Stay tuned for news in depth coming up next.